So, um, what's going on with Svalbard? I know I've been like striating through alternate realities of Earth like a flicker lens. But like today, Svalbard returned, where the island of How to Train Your Dragon. So it makes me wonder, in other Earth realities where everybody's polluted and crushed the Earth down, and there is no Svalbard, and there's no islands up there that are warmer, that are traditionally Viking or whatever. So, if that's true, then it's a myth, a legend that Svalbard was even there and warm enough to live on. Because they're in a reality where their whole planet's dying. Bye bye. So, the thing is, with Svalbard returning out of thin air overnight on my Google Earth, is that nothing makes sense at Svalbard because how could there be houses on the sides of these, hills here by the bay? Like, okay, here's an airport, Longyear Bayou, Svalbard Museum, all this makes sense. There's roads. Then you get over here. Now, this house is at 320 feet, 219 for that house. Okay, this one's by the coast. And yet, all of these houses, you'll see, there's no way down to the coast for a boat. And I'm guessing, no matter how good the weather is probably too much ice for small boats starting in like October or November. So, how do they get anywhere? My question is, there's these houses and they're not close together. It's like I'm not seeing the whole truth of reality. This happens where there were houses on my mountain over there. This is hilarious. Um, Black Canyon, whatever that's called, mountain over there. Now, I'd go with my siblings or friends over the years when we would see a house appear and we would zoom in on it and we would say with a camera or whatever, look, there's no road to that goddamn house. So we would drive as near as we could get to the house. We did this quite a few times on random roads that would appear and disappear through the hills as they shift around, change all the time, which I've shown on camera recently again. And then we hike all the way to the house, and it's like the house is not there, the feeling of it. Like the fields around it are just untouched by tractors or anything. Like there's no evidence there's a person there except a weird house sitting there. So we walk up, and the second we step onto their driveway or whatever, where it ends in weeds, it's like we've activated their reality. And then they step out as like a bloated Republican man murderer, like half the time. But then the other half of the time, they're like not murderers. And they're just people who are like, oh, who are you guys? And they always sense like they get to zoom float out of their house at Mach 9 billion miles per hour and then halt instantly like they weren't moving at high motion speed. My neighbors did that. I used to be watering and he'd come in whatever reality with some other murderer driving in, and then he'd stop down the road back at like the mailboxes. That's why I'm saying a lot of my neighbors are made out of radiation and they're like a false imagination projection of people that they're infecting, because it's like the older generations usually are this piggy. So whoever drove up sneaking in without getting on my property and just on the road where there's all the uranium dust, so his reality wasn't blending with mine, so he couldn't sense me and I couldn't sense him, then the neighbor who's back there actually is like holding back time with a bunch of people's will because he can't actually do anything without this other person he's riding along with. Then his car and all of reality snaps forward, and he's rushing along the road, not creating more dust, like as though time for him is flying along for a second. And so I see him coming along the road, accelerating to hundreds of miles an hour, illogically, like it's a cartoon. So I calmly turn the water off at the exact speed that he's approaching at, as I can sense the exact molecular movement. Because you see, I had my water on in my yard, and that year they needed their uranium dust to blow into my swamp cooler so I would get ill and die, they hoped, before I ever get any life to me, get to live my real life. So that man over there is an absolute total murderer below us. The old man, who was already old when he moved here with his family. So what I was gonna say was I turned the water off, and the droplets, some of them, because of the wacky system of it, fly out onto the road. A few droplets each time it is arcing around, staying on the grass mostly of my lawn. Well, as I turned off the last amount of pressure and it died down, literally one fat droplet jumped out as his car slammed into place, instantly stopping with his head all broken, looking at me sideways. And then he was so shocked and yet so full of false smug from all of society, whoever they are, that he actually does, like how there's those they usually reserve it to teenagers who are infected with the worst infections, where they'll go, I'm feeling, stupid and embarrassed because you won, but I'll say you didn't win and I'll bluff it out. So then he says, there's one droplet on my car, now I can get ya. And I'm like, I just look at him and slowly shake my head like he's just a 2-year-old and he doesn't always get what he wants. And then he just drives off as he realizes all that energy wasted by an entire dying world of cultists was absolutely pointless, and they're just trying to find a point so that they can avoid how depressed they are, so they can try to terrorize more. That's all they're made out of. So back to the houses on the hills. The people will literally say, no, I can leave here. Look, there's a road right there pointing past their driveway. And then we say, okay, then walk off your driveway. And they do. And then, whoop, they're in our reality. There's no road. It's a different planet Earth. And they go, oh, fuck, I'm already dead. And then we say, not really. Now you're in this world. So your other world is, we don't know if you're going back to it or if it's merging with this one, but don't be dead if you're a decent person. Just, figure it out. So these people, right, they're figuring it out. Realities were split by murderer Republicans and their uranium farms. So now this is coming back into view. I could do the same thing. I could walk to one of these houses up on the hill if I was visiting, and I could be, if I visited right now, people would say, sometimes we see old dwellings across the hills as if they're still occupied at night. It's ghostly, or something stupid. And then I'd go over here, walk up to a house, and they'd say, oh, how did you get good? And I would say, yeah, how did I get here? How did you get here? Where's your goddamn paths and roads that lead over to, like, anywhere? Like, look at this. Oh, damn. Oh, there's some dock things down this way. There's never any boat houses. Everything's kind of destroyed. So is this all abandoned or is it not? Doesn't look abandoned. So I'm guessing in the next few days or months or years or something, suddenly this will all have a logical explanation and there'll be a different landscape shoved onto this one with roads and stuff. So there you go. There's just another day slicing through variants of reality early and then building into them. And every time I do, usually, there's more buttheads who call themselves Republicans who declare that they're running the world as the CIA and are just terrorists. From what I've seen, there's more terrorists in North America than there ever has been in the last 100 to 50 years in the Middle East. The Middle East slowly drained of terrorism as it got worse and worse in North America. That's just facts. So, here we are. So they must have some sort of way of living here, because if you look, the supposed North Pole is right here. And yet, off of Finland and Sweden, Svalbard is livable? It sure wouldn't have been 10 years ago. But 15 years ago it was. But 20 years ago it wasn't. But 25 years ago it was. But 30 years ago it wasn't. But 35 years ago it was. It's a striation continually each decade. Part of the decade it's warmer and it's one reality, and then striating back to the murderers. And some people actually have to go back and forth and see the swing as they're just living their lives and survive through long periods where the entire weather's destroyed, the planet's dying, and there's like Republican murder zombies trying to give everybody shots to make them barren. They would try to infect into army bases and stuff in a different reality. This was talked about 20 years ago, how spooky it was. And some person will show up as a balding Republican murderer, like covered in those little micro skin scar lesion like things from like jail bacteria that makes everyone rot and fester that way so that no one can be anything anymore. Trying to murder off everyone, cycle them through with bacteria, and then give them infinite shots. And in the military, the same thing is if you're going to prison and you have to get all these shots they were talking about. And then the people would say the next day, who the fuck were those guys? And they were hyper aggressive, like they if I didn't do what they said, they'd murder me instantly. And then the army says, what? I don't know what you're talking about. We didn't order any shots. Die now. That's literally all I heard about 20 years ago. It was fact. Infinite people saying it, pushing it, holding signs saying it. What the fuck happened? And what the fuck is going on now?